So sorry. Thank you, Jack. And gosh, John, it's been about 12 years, I think, that the company started up. And he's got to talk about 20 minutes. I'm going to let John share and talk right now. So John, do you have slides or are you just talking?
I'm just going to talk. I
Oh,
didn't put together
fine.
slides.
Let me change the format to speaker view. I haven't done that for quite a while though.
Well, should I get started while you're doing that?
Yeah, just go ahead.
All right. I'll try to like move more since I don't have slides. I'm not sure what's worse, looking at slides or just.
I think talking is better. Feel free. Oh, hey, Bill. Good to see you.
Yeah. So I thought, I could go over my path just real quickly. Kevin talked about some of it, but from when I was a student at UD to where I'm at now, talk a bit about that, a little bit about our company, Go Sustainable Energy, and some of the projects we do. So 20, maybe more than 20 minutes, but then I'll stop and take questions, or also feel free to raise. Well, I guess I can't see you if I'm staring at myself, but
sorry, you're now the spotlight, John. You always struggle for that.
Well, I put myself back to gallery view. So feel free to stop, raise your hand if you have a question about something I'm asking, just to break up my voice. But yeah, I'm mostly interested in talking about what you guys are curious about. So I'll kind of lay some things out and then happy to answer questions. So like Kevin mentioned, I was an engineering student at UD, mechanical engineering, a bit over 20 years ago, and not a happy one. So I got into junior year, didn't really like the coursework, was struggling with coursework. Did a co-op, couple co-op terms. I did not like my co-ops, which I now see in retrospect was probably good for me to see what I didn't like, but it really stunk while I was co-oping. It was a downer to get close to the end of the degree, and really had a lot of doubts about if I should be an engineer, if I was going to like it. Did engineers do anything that was important? I looked at the folks working at these companies and I was like, ew, oh, they do not look like they're having fun. And so, but luckily, and Kevin deserves some credit here. He was my advisor, and Kevin helped show me that you could actually do a lot of good with engineering. It didn't just have to be working at some faceless corporation and not enjoying your work. And the energy had energy is a way to influence for a lot of good. So I got into energy and kind of got the bug. Now back then, it was before Hanley Sustainability Institute. There was no RCL program. Ethos was just getting started. So a lot of the avenues you all have today weren't there. I don't, all this sustainability stuff was just getting started. So I got my grad degree, my master's degree at UD from the Industrial Assessment Center, which is a great program. I don't think I would have been able to start our company having not gone through that program. And then Kevin mentioned I started Sustainability Club, which is an overstatement. Really, I started the first meeting. That's kind of at Kevin's suggestion, so he deserves some credit there, but it was a hit. First meeting, we had really great attendance, and we had co-presidents by the second meeting, pretty much second meeting we voted on, I think, and had co-presidents. Bill Eager, who's a blank square on here, is actually my vintage. It was probably at some of those meetings. I married one of the co-presidents, so it turned out to be a pretty good deal for me. We're still married, we have kids. But yeah, Sustainability Club was another formative experience. It let me and the folks we were working with try to be ambitious, figure things out, push for change, fail, like get back at it, learn how to work as a team. So I credit that experience with giving me a lot of the skills and confidence to organize and start new things. When I graduated, there were not really jobs in energy in Ohio. So I did have to look outside the state. I went out to Boston. I had a desire to start a company, but at the time, I kind of weighed pros and cons, and I'm like, an engineer? I didn't go to business school. I don't know anything about starting a company. I do know how to do energy engineering. So why wouldn't I just go to a company that's doing that and work with other people that know how to do the business side? So ERS, where I went to work, they're a great company. They were a foosball company. I think they're a ping pong table company now, which like partial to the foosball, even though we have ping pong tables, but that's against my better judgment. Anyway, I did enjoy working there, but Ohio was home. So after a couple of years, we came back, and frankly, I wanted to do, I was still in my 20s. I wanted to feel like I was making a difference. I wanted to take a risk. So Kevin used a bunch of like nice adjectives to describe me and why I started the company. I hope those are true. Starting a business is a pretty risky, maybe overconfident thing for a person to do. So I look back on it now and I'm like, well, I'm glad it worked out. But with hindsight, the decision, I'm like, I'm not sure why I did that, but I think the motives were good. It worked. It's been almost 15 years since I started the company. What I would equate starting and running a business to is think of like the most crammed finals week you've had, and now make it 15 years long. I'm tired. It is exhausting, and it never, like, if it works, it like doesn't really go away. It's kind of a living, breathing thing. It needs to eat, it needs to grow, it needs to evolve, it needs attention. So it's been very, very, very satisfying, but I knew it, I wouldn't know what it was until I got into it. And so I just refused to listen to anyone who tried to stop me and say, hey, you should think twice before you start a business. I was like, no, I probably won't do it if I listen to you. So I put up the blinders and started the business. But yeah, I mean, you can tell from the name, Go Sustainable Energy. We have a vision in mind of a clean, 100% renewable world. Our mission is to help our customers take informed steps towards that vision. They don't have to share the vision with us. In fact, most of our customers historically haven't. That's changing now, but we don't preach to the choir. We'll work with anyone, and we find that pretty freeing. So as long as someone's willing to make an informed step towards being more efficient or cleaner, and they need our help, we can figure out how to work with them usually. We don't sell products. We're not doing the system design. Actually, we're consultants. We provide accurate, unbiased advice. And we're kind of like the smart shopper for our customers, if you could think of it that way. If you've ever bought a car and you take a family member, like an uncle or your dad or something, to help you buy a car, it's kind of what we're doing with our customers, except with energy. Like any big energy user, their core thing is not, their business is not buying energy and managing energy. It's something else. And so a lot of the decisions they have to make around energy are pretty intimidating. We have expertise. We're not selling them like a project or a product. We're just there to help them and and they'll pay for that. So that's what we do and how we make our money. Historically, we've had kind of three pillars to that. One would be energy assessments of commercial and industrial buildings. We go into the building, make a list of opportunities to save energy and money, put together the cost, and we give them a menu. Here's your action list of things you can do. Another is we call it commissioning. Think of like green LEED certified buildings. We're working with the design team and then through the construction process to make sure the building gets designed and built efficiently. So we're not doing the designing and building. We're working with architects, engineers, and the construction teams to do it efficiently. And then utility program support has been a big part of our company, doing technical assistance. Utility program, when I say that, I mean like an energy efficiency program, where the utility is reaching out to its customers, helping them be more efficient. Our skill sets fit in there. So other things we do now, though, our service areas have expanded, and they're actually kind of expanding pretty rapidly right now. So we do a lot of renewable energy and distributed energy work. This could be anything from feasibility studies to helping our customers put together a request for proposal. We're doing a lot of that. Energy management, I'll talk a bit about that. But we're getting hired now where our staff is like on retainer and we're embedded within our client's organization. And we're seeing this with larger energy spend organizations. You know, if you're kind of like $7.5 million a year in energy costs or above, you might need an energy engineer or manager. And so some corporations are hiring us, and we'll staff that part-time and support it with our whole team. We do some utility data analysis, like kind of big data analysis. We help organizations set energy reduction or carbon reduction goals and then track it. That's a big thing right now, where organizations are like, well, what do we achieve? What's practical? What's economical? They don't want to set a goal that then they miss. They're not sure how to measure it, so we help them do that. And then we have a niche expertise in energy policy and regulations. So there's a whole story how that happened, but we work with the Ohio Manufacturers Association. They're our primary client on that. But essentially, we're doing the same thing. We're providing accurate, unbiased information. And as it turns out, policymakers get very little access to technical information, especially on energy. It's mostly from lawyers or political science majors. Not that that's bad, there's a role for that. But you don't want to be making decisions about the electrical grid without an engineer in the room, which is usually what happens. It's kind of part of the problem, as engineers haven't like kind of figured out how to get into that space. But we have. So a couple other high level things about the company. We have 17 people, local regional firm. Most of our work's in Ohio, but we do work in other states. We're hiring. We've got a job posting right now. We expect to continue hiring, and we hire interns too, mostly from UD, some from OSU, but so if anything I say sounds appealing, you can get a resume into us and we'll take a look for full-time positions or internships. And then we're planning on growing. So Kevin's known us for a long time. Had the company for 15 years and we have 17 people. So you can do the math on how fast we've grown. But we expect that to change probably in the next year or two. We'll pick up the growth rate, and we plan to be in more cities and more states. We hope that we can balance the good work we do and our good culture with some growth. So that'll be a new phase for us. Yeah, let me tell you, I'll give you like a flyover of some recent projects we've done that are pretty interesting. And in some cases, I would say almost like irreplicable. So, if like if you're interested in making a difference with your work, which was what I was interested in when I was in school, and still am. I'm not jaded yet, but it gets a little creepy and lonely when you find yourself doing stuff and then you realize there's not a backup, like the work our company's doing. So it's great, it's a compliment, but we're aware of this, that if we weren't around, like some things wouldn't happen. Things would be worse. So hooray for us, we're making a difference, but it's a little spooky. Like, we're engineers, like that just looks like risk for society. We're like, there needs to be more of us. There needs to be more institutionalization of what's going on. So I think the things we do, you know, we're driven by the long-term solution. It doesn't have to be about us. You know, we want success. We want to work with bigger teams and other people to do that, and institutionalize things, right? We want to build something that works, not make ourselves feel good. So we're still on that path. All right, let me tell you about a couple interesting projects recently, and then we can pause for questions. But one I'm particularly proud of. So we have this energy engineering, like an engineering influence on policy and regulation now, which was super intriguing. We have kind of figured out how to do that on our own. I don't know that there's a lot of models out there for it. But to give you an example of the impact we've made, a couple weeks ago, our Attorney General in Ohio, Dave Yost, filed a settlement with First Energy. If you've been paying to the news, there's this whole bribery scheme, scandal, politicians getting arrested. And in part of this, there was actually a lack of clarity on what this one utility got from the deal. They spun off a subsidiary, which everyone knew was a beneficiary. But the utility itself, the parent company, people weren't sure, well, what'd they get from it? And we were able to, working with the lawyer, pick out a provision in the bill that passed that no one really understood for a good year. Dive into a bunch of filings, work papers, and figure out that they were kind of sneaking away like $100 million a year through an obscure provision called a decoupling provision. Yeah. Like it was going to be. So we put the number together and we said, well, people call it the coupling provision. We're going to call it $355 million that they're going to get through 2024. And that got everyone's attention. We got a lot of media around it. But the reason Attorney General Yost, he actually had that as an attachment in his filing, his court filing. And that was partially to give us a shout out. He didn't have to do that. Obviously, he needed to do it. Like there was a law enforcement aspect to it. But we were kind of like on the spot, figured it out, put the numbers together, brought attention to it. And that hadn't been done. And so pretty proud of that. Similar thing right now with the main thing of this bill and the scandal was so-called bailout of 2 nuclear plants in Ohio. Well, it turned out it wasn't a bailout, it was a handout. They didn't need the money to operate. But it was super confusing. People didn't know this. Some people like nuclear energy, you know, you get scared because it's, you know, there's not carbon emissions to it. And we had been issuing memos that were going to policymakers for actually a couple years now, saying your law is not going to work. It's not going to work because it's going to run into this other federal issue, and it's actually going to make it harder for these plants to compete in the marketplace. They're going to get penalized for getting a state subsidy. We were ignored. We're told to go away. We're like the skunk in the room. And that company, this is an Akron-based company, and I'm from Akron. Kevin, you're from Akron too, right? No, you're not. Okay. Well, whatever. Anyone else from Akron? This is Energy Harbor, which is a First Energy subsidiary, but they just came back This was the company that was like doing the bribing, and they came back and lobbied to have their own subsidy taken away because of this issue we were bringing light to. So we're like taking a couple really big "I told you so" laps. But these two things over the next decade, probably about $1 billion each. So you can look at this in the news. Dave Yost has taken some credit for it, but we're going to share a little bit behind the scenes. But that's been really, really interesting, meaningful work for us. We haven't got to the coal plant that got bailed out in it yet, so we've still got some things on our list to get to, but it means a lot to save the ratepayers of Ohio, the customers of Ohio, this much money. It was primarily those charges were coming down on small businesses and residences, including low-income communities. So, you know, that is a massive amount of money that we're keeping in our communities instead of getting pulled out and going to some hedge funds. So that was cool. We had fun with that. Another interesting project we did, this is flipping, we're going to a different type of customer, but fast food chain that's in Ohio that we work with, and we've been helping put together their corporate energy report, and then helping create scorecards for their franchisees so they understand their energy use and how they're progressing towards their goals. And then we saw this coming, but we knew they were going to have an issue because they have like thousands of restaurants, quick service restaurant. You would call it fast food, but you know, so you have all these very similar buildings. And what we saw was like a data source to benchmark with. And they didn't really have a way to benchmark or think about their many, many buildings. They wanted something from Energy Star, but Energy Star doesn't have something for fast food restaurants. And so we were able to like basically take Energy Star's algorithm. They publish what they do. And then we took the data for this fast food chain, and like we basically replicated it and gave them a custom score. And so now each restaurant has a 0 to 100 score. They're super excited about it. They understand it. They don't understand otherwise, like a restaurant owner, like a franchisee's owner, kilowatt hour, BTU, these sorts of engineering terms around energy don't make a lot of sense if you're not in the field. So coming out with a score for them was a big deal. So that was really cool. We got to like, you know, I know Kevin's a data person, but we got to dive in, like pull all this data out and like create a whole benchmarking algorithm from scratch. And now we're going to go present it to Energy Star, EPA Energy Star, which is really cool. They want to see what we did. Hopefully we can take it to other corporations. But it lets them compare their buildings and then track progress, which is super important to help them manage energy. Okay, I'm going to flip to another. I've got two more I wanted to share, giving you highlights of what we do. In Central Ohio, we have a healthcare system, Ohio Health. If you're from Central Ohio, you're probably familiar with some of their hospitals. So this is an example of like, we're the energy management team for that whole healthcare system. So the system is our client, and then some of the individual hospitals are our clients. And so we've got people every day. We have Ohio Health emails. We're embedded with their facilities team, with their purchasing decisions. They also have goals. We help them make their goal. It's tied to some executive compensation. If you want to see the world of energy management or energy change real quick, you attach people's salaries to progress. And that's starting to happen. But organizations don't do this without having like, you know, is it going to work? No one wants to tie their salary to something and then fail. And so it's been a really good relationship, but it's fun. They, you know, I probably shouldn't say since this is being recorded and since Wayne Bader's going to watch it because he's with the healthcare system, but they have a large energy spend. So it's fun for us because it lets us influence, you know, millions, you can guess, more of annual energy spend and make that better. last project I wanted to share with you, and this is a fun new one we just started working on this year, but we're working on a community solar project, really a community solar model up in the Cleveland area, with some historic neighborhoods, underserved neighborhoods, but community solar, we're thinking actually more of community power. It's probably solar in most cases, but can be other things. But you know, the folks in the neighborhood there, I thought put it well, which was, you've got this energy infrastructure right now, this big piece of our economy. There's billions of dollars of money attached with this. And that money goes out of our wallets and out of our homes, through our utility bills, you know, and where's it end up? If you trace it back, it's like, it goes to the usual suspects, right? The investor class. And so community solar, community power projects, one way to look at it would be like, oh, it can help the project get done. The other way to look at it is, there's a lot of people that that aren't winners in today's economy. If you want to create wealth and equity, one way to do it is you bend that cost of the utility bill, which everyone pays anyways, and you have it go into like a share of a project. So we're not exactly sure how the model is going to work out. We're not with the finance piece, but as far as coupling these projects and subscribers and how's the electricity work and how's the carbon piece work, and is there a share of the project? How do we create wealth in the communities that are buying the energy? We're there figuring out and helping forge like how these projects would work with the utility. The utilities really aren't that interested. So that's part of the issue. There's a lot of entrenched interests. Like if you're, you know, we're going to have a lot of power plants shut down, all these new technologies coming online. And so as that becomes realer and realer and people are kind of aware there's money to be made, there's this other question of, well, who is making that money? Like who's benefiting from the wealth piece? And maybe let's not forget that as we change the systems over. So super excited about this project. We're working with a nonprofit development corporation up in the Cleveland area. That, I mean, it's like a dream project. It's like all these things I just mentioned were dream projects. 5 years ago, we weren't doing any of that. Our work was a lot more mundane, but there's some fun things going on. We still do mundane work. As it turns out, there's part of our job that is just a job. And in fact, doing the mundane work sometimes is how we get the good work. So we are a relationship-driven company. We don't really have sales staff. Some of us handle business development, but we get repeat work, word of mouth. We go cheap on sales. We don't spend money on it. And we go overboard with engineering and customer service and building a relationship, you know. And it turns out that works pretty well. People remember it. They say these guys and gals worked hard for us. They answered our question, they come back. So sometimes we're doing a project this January where frankly, all we were doing was counting lights. Went out and counted a bunch of lights. Not super interesting. But the client was thrilled with the job we did. And they keep hiring us, and eventually they'll hire us for something really cool. So let's see. That, you know, that was, I wanted to give you like flyover, here's who I am, like where I came from, what the company does, smattering of interesting projects we're doing or have done just recently. And so I'll stop. I would love to get questions.
So before we do that, everybody, how about a hand in your muted hand? There you go. All right, Olivia, you got it. Hey, questions, anybody? You can unmute to ask. I'm sure you have some.
I can start it off. I guess my question is going back to when you decided to start this company. looking at the energy sector and renewable energy, how did you pick the niche of doing this kind of consulting work, kind of sticking yourself in the middle of the system of the design and the management and the legislation, everything? Like, how did you pick that out of all the things of engineering to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way I started was with the vision. Like for me, a driver was like, I needed to work on the problem. Like, like sometimes you just got to work on something of substance. And so for me, it was the vision, like, what am I working towards with the hours I put in, was super, super important. And I needed to feel that my work was personally connected to like the climate change issue, all the other things that come with energy, energy poverty, like, oh God, like Middle East oil. There's so many rotten things in the world that we can fix if we work on energy. So the vision was important to me. From that, I was like, you know what, whatever works. So I was like, like if I'm living off of ramen, I think I can do that. I think I'm be pretty good at being poor. I like campfires and looking at the stars. It's pretty cheap. I'm like, so what? Just give me something. Let me work towards the vision, and that's the low bar. But then I was like, well, am I selling light bulbs or solar panels? And I had this industrial assessment center experience. I really liked providing the advice, crunching the numbers and providing the advice. I did not want to have that kind of intellectual output be pressured by having to sell something, which is usually how information gets to customers. It's with a product sale. I didn't like that. It wasn't a good fit for me. I like to be right when I done with the number. If it's the right number, I want people to see the right number. Just like with the coupling. So that's why I was like, if I can make this work, providing advice, then that's what we'll do. I was open to doing something different, but fortunately, like, it worked. There's a market out there, a consulting market for advice like this. So it was natural skill set and personality fit for us. And I was very, very fortunate to have had experience such that I actually knew how to provide this service when I started the business.
So I just had a question as far as, so this is Trent Malone. I just had a question about, I guess, some of the mistakes that you may have made in your process of, creating a company. You talk to a lot of different people. I've talked to people in the past, and there's a lot of mistakes that you make because you don't have a team organized with you sometimes. So you're trying to do it all. So I just want to hear about some of the mistakes that may have happened.
Oh, good for you. This guy's talking too much about his successes. Yeah. Oh, I don't even know where to start. It's like every day. So, I have a high tolerance for error and humiliation. Gosh, let's see. So one mistake was like when we first started payroll, you pay taxes with your paycheck, taxes come out. I did not know that a bunch of those taxes, the company matches. There's like another layer of taxes that the company pays. When you get a paycheck and you see those deductions, take a bunch of that. Your employer's paying like almost that same amount separately. I had no idea. It had never occurred to me that this would be the case. So when we finally started payroll, and I was so proud of getting payroll done, I kept looking at the checking account and I'm like, oh, that's like off. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm like redoing the math, and our checking account just kept going lower than expected. And this was really early on when we were small and we did not have a lot of money. And so finally I figured out like, oh, this is a thing. And it hurt. It stung. I did not like that.
And you weren't charging enough for your services.
Well, no, I mean, that's
No?
still true, but
Yeah.
but a similar one was like, I just didn't understand what sort of financing a company needed. And when the Great Recession hit, we weren't ready. And small businesses, I called it the bank of small business. People borrow money, but then the smallest business that they owe money, they're like, I know who's going to wait. I know who's going to wait to get paid. It's not the bank or the utility, it's the small fry. And we were everyone's small fry. So all our customers were like, like, what are you going to do? Hire a lawyer? You're not going to hire a lawyer. There's no lawyers here. No, I can't afford a lawyer. So we just had like not only work plummet, but months of work we had done. And all of a sudden everyone's like, you are not getting paid. We were having a kid at the same time. It was stressful. And it turns out there's a thing businesses use in this situation. It's called a line of credit. So this was another thing, like we had gone years and I'm like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't feel uncomfortable. It's a lot of money. And then we lucked out. We found a bank that was willing to give us a line of credit. There were no banks really then that wanted to give any sort of like financing to a small business. It was pretty dire. We like squeaked it out. Like, these sci-fi and Marvel movies where the plane like squeaks through like a little passage and like the radar shield gets knocked. That was us in 2009. So those are a couple mistakes. Were they mistakes? I didn't know, but that's a business. Like there's no excuses, right? So if you don't know about something, like you can't whine about it because it affects you anyways. I got a long list, Trent, but those are a couple that come to mind. And I think a lot of business, like small businesses, like go through that learning curve of figuring out the money piece.
I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Do you want to go?
You can go. Go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna ask, I know you mentioned earlier like working for a bigger company in Boston. So I was gonna ask you like what was the transition like from working from a bigger company to transitioning to starting your own company and then working for a smaller business? Do you like it better kind of working for yourself at a smaller company or working for a bigger company?
Yeah, so the big company was my co-op. I didn't like it when I was there. I think I was probably not gonna, there was a lot of reasons I wasn't gonna like it. The company in Boston now, they are bigger than we are now, but when I joined them, they were like, I think I was number 14, employee 14. My company's 17 now. So they were a small company. I really like the small company feel. When I was younger, like big companies just weren't a good fit for me because you get lost. I mean, I don't know how you can't get lost in some of these big companies. It's hard for me to manage 17 people. 17 people feels big. And when you've got thousands, now, honestly, I'm impressed. I used to be ticked. I used to be angry at these companies. Now I'm like, I don't even know how you do, like, how's that even work? But I would say, so my thoughts on it are a bit more nuanced now. I think a small company, what happens is you have to wear a lot of hats. Like a lot of hats. So sometimes you're doing things you don't want to do, or you're not specialized for. So that's like, like the financial stuff. It's like, oh, well, I didn't know that. Well, at another company, they have people that specialize in that knew that, right? So this happens with small companies all the time. There's surprises that come up, no matter how well you manage it, that you're just unprepared for because, of course, right? You can't be experts in everything. Finance, HR, legal stuff. So if you have a personality where you like to thrive on like random things upsetting your day and you get to solve the problem, small companies are great. There's also, right, we can set our own rules. So we love this. We have a great culture. We can pick and choose our clients. We can pick and choose our work to some extent. If we have a problem, we can just solve it. We don't need to I don't need to run it up the flagpole. We're the flagpole. The flagpole's short. Just like, we can solve our problems. And that has been actually really empowering because We do have problems, but we trust each other, and we look at each other and we're like, oh, kind of our company, we can do what we want, so let's see if we can figure it out. And then a lot of times we can't. We have to come back. We're like, problem's still the problem. We'll have to attack it 4 or 5 times. So I think bigger companies, what we see is we're like, oh, they figured a bunch of stuff out. They got a specialist that does this for them. They do it way better than us. We're fumbling trying to figure it out. But then we're like just way more agile, right? This community solar and the work we did with the restaurant, the decoupling stuff, this breadth and depth of what we're doing, I'm not sure you could do at a big company. We needed like kind of a tight team of experts. So I have no idea if that answered your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I wanted to add is we'll talk about this at the company. We're a small team as part of a bigger team. So if you think of a big corporation, you end up in some unit, like a business unit. You're usually on a team of like 10 or 12 people as part of a bigger group. There's pros and cons with that. And so one way we try to get the benefits of a bigger organization is we view ourselves like that with our clients and with our community. So we don't necessarily view like Go Sustainable Energy as this like, yes, there's some definition around the 17 employees there. But we kind of try to make it fuzzy, right? So like to not have as much of a barrier between like us and Kevin Howland or us and Ohio Health or us in our cities and communities. So we do a lot of like partnering and working with other people and try to get some of those like bigger group feels from working with our clients and our colleagues and our communities.
Sounds good. Hey, did somebody else have a question?
I did.
Caroline.
Yeah, is it okay if I ask one more? All right.
Yeah.
I thought the community solar project sounded really interesting, and I just wanted to ask, like, on a community project of that scale, how do you go about accounting for the different stakeholders that are in that project?
Yeah. Hey, good thinking, because that is critical. So one thing is like we had a history of being engineers and providing information and then watching the information not get acted on. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And so we tried not to take that personally. We didn't. And then we started saying like, how come sometimes our recommendations work and other times not at all? And we realized a lot of it's stakeholder engagement and figuring out who the right people are to talk to. And I think that's part of why we're doing things like energy management now, is because we can cross these management silos, things like that. I think it's why we get trusted, where we can get brought in on something like a community solar project. Our first step, we haven't gotten that far with it. Our first step with this community solar project has been to draw out who all the actors and players were, because we couldn't tell. Our client was saying like, no one knows what their role is. We need to figure out what everyone's roles is. Already there's like a whole bunch of like stepping on people's toes going on before we even got there. We're pretty nervous about it, but we've been in situations like this before. And so I think part of it is being aware that we're not alone. It's not our thing. There's like many people. We have to figure out who needs communicated to, what's their role in the project. And so our first job was like, we drew it out like for our team. So we knew that just the team working on the project first, that we knew where everyone was at. It's very similar to like, I don't know how many of you are engineers, I'm assuming a decent number, but you draw a system out, like this piece moves that piece. And sometimes when you're just talking, you think you're in agreement, and then you draw it out and you're like, oh, we were not thinking the same. So we do that with people. We're like, these people are here, these people are there, they make decisions on this, they need to know this. And then we communicate. We do a lot of listening. I think it's something we do well. To be quite honest though, our society at large is not real good at listening to each other. So, but it's like a big part of our job is like we ask questions and we listen, and there is a lot of that. So it works for us, but sometimes our clients are like, why, how come you need to be telling us what to do? And we're like, oh, that comes way later. We're like, nope, we got more questions. You need to tell us things. And so we can get there. But yeah, the thing with community solar is I have not seen a lot of concrete examples of it working the way I think people think it wants to work. One of the stakeholders is the utility. They're not willing, a lot of times they're not willing stakeholders. So that's a whole thing of like, how do you piece all these things together? And when one of the pieces you want that you need to work doesn't want to join the team, that's a whole other level of like communication on how do you make that happen and not get a conflict. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're excited about it.
Hey, Bill, you raised your hand.
Hey, Bill.
You look, Mr. Eager, you look exactly the same.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you, Kevin. Good to see you, John. Thanks for talking tonight. And those who I don't know on the phone, I'm also a UD alumni and joining in for the discussion tonight. So appreciate your questions and your eagerness to learn from one of the heroes in the energy space. I'm out of UD. My question, John, for you is kind of looking forward, prognostication maybe. Kind of what do you see is, the technology, policy, and market trends, maybe 5 years out that is going to really drive your business moving forward? And how do you see Go Sustainable Energy being able to facilitate or accommodate customers and clients and their needs in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, I think for like 5 years and 10, 15 years, it's probably going to be driven by integration of like distributed energy technologies or management strategies into the electric grid. So, right now our electric grid's mostly centralized power plants still, coal plants, nuclear plants, fossil fuel plants. Even the renewables coming in are like, large utility scale, big plants, solar farms, wind farms, and they plug into a wire and then they go out to all the homes, right? It's very like electricity is generated here and it goes out. And what we're starting to see is the electrons go the other way. In some cases and at some times, which we've all known was coming, or like Bill or Kev, like this was gonna happen, this day was gonna come. We're starting to see it. And there's a whole bunch of like practical challenges, there's technical, economic issues, but you have to understand like how the machines work, like the engineering piece. You have to understand how customers make decisions, because they're like, that's like a virtual distributed power plant. We're like crowdsourcing electricity almost. So you have to understand how the people are working on the stuff in the facilities, their management decisions. But then you have to understand like how the grid works, like how electricity is balanced, how the markets work, the policies and regulations and the tariffs that make all this, that glue the two pieces together. I think it's going to be kind of chaos. I don't think it's going to go smoothly or linearly in a straight line. But we're seeing a huge uptick in that sort of need, where we can speak these different languages and bring them together and help projects get through. So yeah, so we're investing in like communication skills. We're still going hard on engineering skills that we need, but then the like regulations and policy and markets piece we're working on too. Texas this week is a prime example of like people, like there's so many arguments about Texas right now. I don't even want to pay attention, but I'm like, there's like real technical challenges that we're going through, and that we fit in there as an engineer, and hopefully we won't contribute or get caught up in the politicization of it. But so that's kind of where I see us fitting.
Thank you, Mr. Eager. future speaker in our clean energy series. Okay. Good. Hey, I think we'll let John get back to his family, everybody. It's just, John, amazing to see you and to hear you and to see what competence you brought to Go Sustainable and what enthusiasm and energy. And thank you so much too for continuing to hire University of Dayton graduates. That's always been something really good. So John, thank you so much. It was excellent. Everybody,
Yeah,
one
thank you.
last hand.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Yep. Great job, John.
Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kevin. Have a good night.
Hey, see you, Matt.
Thank
Olivia,
you.
Thank you.
great to see you. Yeah. Charlie, Saeed, bye-bye. Yep.